It's time for Mad Rewind, yeah, with your host, Brandee Stilwell.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mad Rewind. In my log line for Mad Rewind, it's conversations about the magic that was MADtv with the cast and crew. Well, today is a crew member, a writer to be specific. So I'm just gonna get going into it. So my next guest was a writer on MADtv for 6 seasons, writing on 90 episodes. While at Mad, he earned 3 Writers Guild Award nominations in 2001, 2002, and 2003. He's also written for The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, Saturday Night Live, HBO's Sketchpad, Review, that would be with Andy Daly, and Key and Peele. He's an alum of Chicago's Second City and Improv Olympic, and he also provided punch-up work on films like Mean Girls and Get Out. He's a Peabody Award-winning writer and producer with 4 Emmy nominations. Now, going back to Key and Peele, he is responsible for the sketch Substitute Teacher, Aaron, which was recently referenced as a clue on Jeopardy! And in 2024, that sketch was added to the Smithsonian Institute's National Museum of American History. And finally, my favorite quote that I found about him, Rich Talarico is one of the great all-time Caucasian improvisers. Tina Fey. Fans of Mad Rewind, please welcome Rich Talarico. Yay! Woo!
Thanks, Brandee. Thank you, Mad.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come onto the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. I love what you're doing, and I'm happy to walk down memory lane with you.
Thank you. I'm like, there's 2 things that stick in my head with you. I did take a class from you. I don't know if you remember this, because we didn't really get a chance to talk before. I mean, we're Facebook, Instagram friends, but I didn't get a chance to kind of catch up with you. But I remember taking a class with you in Atwater Village. Do you remember that place?
Yeah, the B space.
Yes, it was. I want to say it was the owner of the home was a ex-ballerina and had a dance studio. So that's where the class was. But I remember specifically there was a giant avocado tree above, right, and these suckers were the size of like cantaloupes. And so every now and then you'd be like in a scene and one would hit the roof and it would scare the shit out of everybody. And you would just like very calmly be like, it's improv, you got to stay on your toes. And then people would go and fight for that avocado either during break or when the class was over, so they could feed their family guacamole that night.
Yeah, it was a wonderful space owned by 2 actors when I was renting it from them. And yeah, I loved it. It was huge, windows on all sides, and it was just such a beautiful space. We usually did classes in the mornings on Sundays and started teaching there in 2009. Okay.
Yeah, it was such a fun class, but I am still mentally a little traumatized from the avocados just randomly. And then one more quick story with
Sure.
you. One of my favorite bands growing up was U2. And because you were a writer on Saturday Night Live, I looked up November 20th, 2004, U2 performed on Saturday Night Live. They did 3 songs. I think it was the first time that a band did actual 3 songs. And I had reached out to you and I was like, hey, if U2 books it all, can I come? Can you help me get into a taping? And you're like, absolutely. And then you literally called me the next week and was like, hey, I have 2 tickets for you. So I got to go to the camera blocking and to the actual taping and then the after party and then the after party. So thank you. It was still one of my favorite days of my life, November 20th, 2004, Luke Wilson, U2. So thank you. All these years later, I still.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm so glad it worked out. It was very hard to get tickets for those shows, and was happy to make it happen.
I feel like I owe you. If you need your garage cleaned out, let me know. I do pay back my debts.
You got it.
All right, well, let's just get going. Rich Talarico, when did you know that you were funny, or do you remember your first laugh?
Yeah, I stunk at everything in high school until the school play. And I remember getting a laugh in the school play, and that was it. That was like getting bit by the bug. And from there, I went to, just doing all the school plays and that kind of stuff. And there were these kids in my class who were in a band, and they were going to do a concert at the high school. And they asked me if I would tell jokes, before their concert at the high school. They were called Chaos, Kaos, which stood for Kick Ass on Stage, and also Kick Ass on Skates, because they were all skaters. But I did it. I did 5 minutes of jokes before they went up. And I had an art teacher named Talarico. He spells it wrong, but I had an art teacher named Talarico. Very cool guy. He protested the Vietnam War. He was, also owned a nightclub in Utica, New York. So I asked him during our art class. I thought he would say no in a second. And I go, hey, what do you think about me telling some jokes at your nightclub? He goes, I love it. Let's do it. And, I'm 17 and I'm in this nightclub. I'm bringing on bands. I'm telling jokes. And I eventually got into another comedy club in Utica called the Palm Beach Club. And they had a Wednesday night stand-up thing. And I would sneak into that. I was the only guy that used a fake ID to get into watch comedy. And I went there every week. And I kind of became friendly, or at least familiar with the owner. And one night he's at the bar lamenting how much he hated hosting the show. And I go, I'll host it for you. And he goes, oh, thank goodness. And he had me up there. So I was, doing stand-up and community theater, had dropped out of community college, and heard about Second City in 1992, in the summer of 92, and moved to Chicago in October of 92. And my first teacher was Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
I know, I got so lucky.
Are you still in touch with him after all these years? Did you guys stay friends?
Well, not as much. I ran into him when I worked at SNL, and I went up to say hi to him, and I thought he wouldn't remember me. He gave me a huge hug. And he was also a teacher of a guy named Bill Cott, who you probably know from LA, Chott, Bill Cott. Bill and I were in Stephen's class, and Bill eventually worked with Colbert on the Dana Carvey show. Bill was one of the ensemble members of that show. And when Bill left the touring company, he put in the good word for me, and I got into the Second City touring company really because Bill threw me a bone and said, hey, this guy's good. He could, take over my spot. And that's how I actually got into Second City, because I failed those auditions so many times. Even the auditions to study at Second City, I kept failing those. And, what I did was, after I failed the second Colbert audition to get into Second City, I went to him and I said, what am I doing wrong? He said, go to Improv Olympia. That was the name of Improv Olympic at the time, because they were being sued by the Olympic Committee. He said, go to Improv Olympia and find Del Close and Sharna Halpern. They're teaching something called the Herald. And I barely even understood what improv was, but I went up there and started studying with them. And then I would go back to Second City after a round of classes, and my confidence was growing, but I still kept failing the auditions. And by the third time I went back to audition, I finally did get in. And I remember thinking, I was at Improv Olympic on the north side of Chicago, and I was like, oh, great. Here I am with all these losers who can't get into Second City. And all the losers were Adam McKay, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Rachel Dratch. So these were fantastic losers. And eventually Second City did have a shift where they started to bring people in from Improv Olympic, and they were not hiring folks from their own program. And that was a big sea change. My first main stage company at Second City was all Improv Olympic people. And it was the first one where it was all people that were trained by IO. But no, I eventually got in and got through the training. And then I started working at Second City in 95, I think.
So I want to go back. You went a little bit ahead, but I want to go back to almost childhood. Did you have family members that were funny that you play off of?
Well, it's interesting because I remember I went to Chicago and then I came back to hang out with my family, and Chicago was just full of people that were doing bits all the time. you would only have to suggest an idea in a bit and it would just turn into something. I remember my dad picked me up from the airport and we were driving back and I said something that was like the start of a bit. And he was just like, yeah, that's good. Good. And, and I realized, oh yeah, like people don't live their lives in bits. But my parents were funny. They have good senses of humor. All my family liked to laugh. My aunt had a very dark sense of humor because we're Italian. So there was a lot of battles and these people don't talk to these people in the family. And I was with my Aunt Lucy once and we were watching a TV show about a family reunion and we never had one at that point. We'd never had one. So I remember just kind of innocently saying, hey, Aunt Lucy, when are the Talaricos going to have their family reunion? And she really didn't miss a beat. She goes, in hell.
And some of them are actually made it.
Can't wait to see them all again.
It's going to be a party. I know I'm going to enjoy it when I get there too. Who were your childhood comedy heroes?
Yeah, I really love this question because it gives me a chance to kind of think back to what did I just really enjoy. And I think when I was younger, it was people like John Ritter and Three's Company. I grew up in central New York, so we had WPIX, which was the New York City station. So I saw Abbott and Costello every Sunday morning. And every weeknight, The Honeymooners and The Odd Couple were on. Okay. So I watched a ton of that. Of course, I Love Lucy, saw all of those. People like Robin Williams. And later in life, like the hardest I laughed as a teenager, I remember, was from the movie The Naked Gun. That absolutely knocked me out. I mean, I was literally laughing out loud. Coming to America, I was a teenager when I saw that. Thought that was brilliant. Still love that movie. Did
you do any impressions as a kid? Or or did you quote anybody, or were you just on like your own little train track of doing your own little bits and jokes?
It's interesting. I don't think I did a lot of impressions. I mean, maybe what I saw on SNL, and I would try to do the impressions that they did. But no, I wasn't really an impressionist. I think I was a little bit more of a class clown, and I just like to make things fun and have fun with everything I could, because I really wasn't academic and I didn't excel in sports. So prior to even doing the musicals, I was just like trying to joke around and have fun. I went to Catholic school when I was very young, and extreme boredom. I remember in one of the classes looking at the red second hand that goes around the clock, and I was saying, that has to go around 42 more times before I can leave. And I would watch it and literally watch it. And I was also an altar boy, so if I did get pulled out of class, it'd be like I was working a funeral. And that's super depressing, to go bang the incense at a funeral at Wednesday at 9 a.m. And then my friends and I also used to, when I went to middle school, it was a public school. But we found out that the school would let you out of class if there was a holy day of obligation. So we got the calendar from the church and we were like, okay, hey, we got to go. It's the Feast of the Assumption, and then we would take the slowest walk to church and the slowest walk back. So used a lot of that just to get out of school.
Oh, that's awesome. I would be volunteering left and right if I were you. So after when you were done with Improv Olympic and Second City in Chicago, where did you go after that? What was your next move?
Yes, well, in the pipeline of Second City and a little bit of Improv Olympic, SNL would come and look at people in the summer. And in 97, I was still working at Second City, and I really wanted to get onto the main company. I was in the ETC stage, which is like a sister stage that also does, that kind of comedy review. And Saturday Night Live offered me a writing job in 97, and I didn't take it. I went and met with them, and I met with Mike Shoemaker, who's now the producer of Seth Meyers, and Adam McKay had put in a good word for me. And it was a Friday, and I was going to the airport, and they called and said, you would start on Monday. They want to bring you in. But I was like in the middle of my Second City stuff. You know, I worked so hard to get in there, and I was like inches away. I thought I was very close to getting the main company. I didn't have a guarantee that I would get it. And I also thought of myself as an actor. I was like, I'm not a writer. You know, I don't want to be a writer. I'm an actor. So I called and apologized profusely. I said, thank you so much for the opportunity. I think I'm going to stay in Chicago. I did get the opportunity to get on main stage and was very grateful. And I did, you know, worked at Second City for 5 years, complained about it for 10. And after Second City was over, I did a show in Chicago called The Roof is on Fiddler, which was a parody of Fiddler on the Roof. We redid it as an 80s style show where all the songs were like 80s pop songs, but the Fiddler songs. So tradition became That's Just the Way It Is by Bruce Hornsby and the Range, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was a big hit in the summer of 2001 in Chicago. Like the Chicago Tribune gave us this rave review, but we weren't legally allowed to do it. So we also kind of heard from the Fiddler people. Fiddler on the Roof is like $1 billion a year industry. Yeah. Most popular in Japan because of the themes of tradition. That's where it makes its most of its money. So we kind of ceased and desisted from that. And I was kind of floating in Chicago, not sure, you know, I'd left Second City, you know, on my own and wasn't sure what was next. And then Dick Blasucci, who was the producer of MAD, came to see this Fiddler on the Roof show, I think at the request of Stephanie Weir, who was on MAD at the time. And I guess Dick loved it and had heard about me. And I did a phone call with Dick and Devon Shepard and Lauren Dombrowski, RIP, and just did a phone call with them, talked about a few comedy ideas, and they offered me a writing job. And I was like, oh, great, another writing offer. You know, I was, you know, but I thought, hey, it's a free trip to LA. I kind of did all the things I really wanted to achieve in Chicago. And I thought it was, hey, a good time to move to LA. And I moved there in like August of 2001 and got started with MAD around that time. Because
they kind of plucked you off the stage, you never had, did you have a pitch packet or anything like that of characters or writing samples, or they just saw you on stage and were like, we want this guy?
You know, I don't know what I sent them. I mean, I did have a handful of sketches, stuff that I had written and developed at Second City. Second City also had a radio show that we did. We taped it to, you'll appreciate this, to linearly to digital audio tape. That means we had to record the opening song, then we had to record the first sketch live. And if we made a mistake, we'd have to go back and re-record that sketch. And we were in a closet with like sheets of paper, trying not to rustle them. And we did that show for a while. So I had a handful of sketches from that radio show that were under my belt. But no, I think, you know, Dick Blasucci is also a Second City alum.
Yep.
So I think that bore a lot of weight with him. And, you know, they gave me a shot and a 3-year contract with a lot of options. But no, I was very happy. I joined MAD for seasons 7, 8, and 9.
Okay. So when, like, even what you brought with you, did any of those sketches make it on to MADtv? Or did you just like, I'm starting fresh and because I don't need anything that I've done in my past, I'm just going to start writing for what's in front of me?
Yeah, I think like there's instances, very famous instances of Mary Catherine Gallagher from Saturday Night Live, which I'm pretty sure she developed at the Groundlings. Mm-hmm. There was a Chris Farley sketch that was, as many people now know, was written by Bob Odenkirk called the Van Down by the River sketch, the motivational speaker. And I think like you were allowed to go kind of hat in hand to Second City and say, hey, I really want to get this on SNL. I don't think I did that with any of my Second City stuff. I had, you know, years worth of stuff there, but it's also kind of developed with other people. So it's a little touchy, you know, because you really do develop it. And we all kind of work on the show together. So I didn't have anything that I brought to MAD. And I probably started with like a list of notions. It's usually what I have. And I tell my writing students this all the time, which is, you know, the easiest way to come up with comedy ideas is to live life as a normal participant and wait for things to annoy you. which is wonderful news because, I tell my students, hey, you're never going to be annoyed again, because comedy writers don't get annoyed. We say, thank you, annoying thing. So I would probably have a list of notions, and every day I'd go back to it and try to build on them a little bit. I'd done a ton of improv at that point and started just, finding my way. I wrote more or less the kinds of scenes I think that would be called what Lauren Dombrowski used to call sceney scenes, which is the kind of scenes that he and Peele like to do. Meaning they're not necessarily built around a stock character, although I did write for some of the characters. But a lot of my stuff were like premise-driven, one-offs, those kind of sketches. They weren't straight parody, a lot of them.
So because you kind of came from a acting background, did you ever audition to be on MADtv or just pure writing?
No, I never auditioned. I did, find my way into maybe 7 to 10 sketches over the time I was there. I remember learning a lot, Brandee. I remember being on the other side of the camera and hearing what the producers and directors and everyone is saying about the actors. I was like, wow, I learned a lot in terms of just don't be too needy. Try to give them what they want, and try to keep your head down and just do the work. Not that anyone was abusing that, but I just felt like I learned a lot. It was like seeing everything from a different perspective. Because I had worked as an actor for 10 years in Chicago before I, moved to LA. And then once I started with the writing, I just really didn't look back. I enjoyed it so much. And I liked the chill nature of it. And I could still act if I wanted to, but the writing really suited me and I was really happy to do it.
Before we leave acting, you were in a very famous A&W root beer commercial, which right. I remember quoting it before I met you, and I'm like, oh, it's the Mr. Dumbass, and you're like, no, it's Dumas. Right. Did you get that commercial while you were still at Second City or Improv Olympic in Chicago? When was you on that commercial? I think I was in the Second City ETC or maybe just got on the main stage, but it would have been probably 1998, I think, when we shot that. And I auditioned for it. And it basically, you already said what it's about. It's basically a guy on a job interview and he keeps calling the guy Mr. Dumbass, but his name is Dumas and the guy just doesn't get it. And I just remember I played it very confidently, not nervously. And I think that really helped me get the part. I played it like I was such an asset to this guy. He'd be a fool not to take me, which is, the comic device of dramatic irony, that I'm totally missing the ball. The audience knows, oh gosh, he's saying this guy's name wrong. And I can't remember the actor's name that I did that with. He was in the movie Roller Coaster, I think it was called, like one of those horror movies. Okay. I think he played the sheriff in that. No, but I had a wonderful time doing that. And it was part of 3 commercials that A&W did about being thick-headed. And that one ran for years. And I made pretty decent money off of it. It allowed me to, keep my improv and acting habit going. And but it ran for a long time, and I would get recognized a lot. People would yell dumbass when I walked down the street. I hope that's why they were yelling that. Fans of MADtv, Google that. Just YouTube A&W dumbass commercial, and here's your thick-headed man that was delivered that line. So funny. So now, so here we are in the thick of MADtv. What was the writing process like for you back then? Did you have were you assigned a certain amount of sketches that you had to write a week? Did you have a particular actor that you always had in mind for, or was it just an open field?
I think it was pretty open, and I don't remember what the requirement was. If there was we need X number a week. I seem to remember we did a lot of pitch meetings where you'd go in and talk to the producers and tell them what you were thinking about. And I think they were trying to keep a bird's eye view and go, oh, maybe we should give it to that actor. Or, they try to take care of all the performers and make sure there was stuff for them. So I remember in the very early time, I would just go in with my list of ideas and, I did partner with a lot of writers too, Bruce McCoy, Tammy Sager, Brian Adams, and eventually a lot with Stephen Cragg, who was a groundling also. So it would be a lot of times like writing with Cragg, I would write a lot with him, and we'd be writing and then something funny would happen and we'd go, okay, that's our next idea. So we were just having a lot of fun, and there was a lot of, silliness and people really enjoying each other, and, camaraderie and playfulness with the actors. At least I felt that. I felt there was a lot of fun and, joyfulness. But Scott King was the head writer during a lot of my time there. And he was very wonderful. But no, you'd go talk to them about whatever idea you had, and they'd go, oh, maybe you could try this, that, or the other thing. But when you're pitching, you'd try to have, the central crux of what the joke is and where you think it goes. And I think we're also allowed to just turn things in if you had a first draft of something. But it was probably, 10, 12 writers, plus all the actors would submit sketches. So, they had a lot of material coming in, although sometimes you'd come out of the table read and you'd see the list that they picked, and it would say sketch to come, sketch to come. It's like, boy, we had so many pieces. So, they were always, I guess, trying to find the right balance for the show and take care of the performers too.
Okay. So while you were at MAD, did you ever have a favorite sketch or character that you created or wrote?
Yeah. And, we talked about this before, so I did think about this a little bit. There were a lot. I mean, I don't, the ones like Lorraine and Stuart and Miss Swan were already in full effect by the time I got there. So those were usually handled by either the original writer or the actor, if the actor wrote it. One of my ones that people might remember is Taco Hell with Keegan. I wrote that with him. The Live from Boca, the two old folks.
Yes.
Wrote that with Tammy. The QVC plus size sketch I wrote with Tammy, and we wrote a couple of those. I did a lot of Dr. Phil and Oprah. I did a lot of Price is Right. Did Bible Dude with Michael McDonald. Another one-off, Tammy Sager and I wrote Lazy Baby, which was a Jenny Jones parody. A lot of Oprah, I think I said. Gay Hulk, I wrote with, I think that was with Cragg. And then, my favorites were, people may or may not remember these, but my favorites were the Lost Conga line was an example. Because I was at a wedding and there was a conga line. And how a conga line is like, oh, we're so zany, we're going to go out on the patio. So my premise was, what if they went out in the patio and then they went out into the city and then they got lost? So the whole bit was this conga line is lost. They're going through neighborhoods where like the street signs aren't in English anymore, and there's a dog attacking them. And obviously the ridiculousness is they could just let go and, go back to their lives. But there's this thing, they're the conga line.
They're committed.
Yeah, and then they finally come back, and it's like years later. It's not even a hotel anymore. And my most favorite sketch, which maybe some people will remember, it was based on a real life experience. I went to go visit my sister in New York State. She was a manager of a metal shop and custom tool manufacturing plant. She was like the office manager. So I went to go have lunch with her. I brought her back to her gig, and she said, the guys that make the tools, all the guys on the floor are fans of MADtv. They'd love to meet you. And I was like, sure. I go, I'll get more out of it than they will, believe me. But I went and met them all, and I'm shaking all their hands. And then I'm walking out, and something was caught me off guard. And I was like, what was going on with those handshakes? And I turned around to wave goodbye again, and they all waved goodbye. And every one of them are missing one or more fingers. I mean, everybody that worked there. And as I was driving back, I was like, when you work in a place like this, it's just a matter of when. So I ended up writing a sketch, and I named it after her business, Custom Tool Manufacturing. And it was, I think, Bobby and Frank Cayetti, Keegan, Jordan, Ike, and forgive me if I'm forgetting who was in it. But basically, they're a group of guys that work in a custom tool place. And they find out from the boss, played by Caliendo, that they've had 999 days on the job without an accident. And in 15 minutes, they're going to have a pizza party. And this idea of having pressure put on them, that they've been doing it for, 3+ years with no incident. And now, almost 3 years with no incident. Now they're going to have to perform. And they start having these little accidents. Tayetti breaks his hand and they're like, should we get the first aid kit? And he's like, no, it'll spoil the pizza party. So now they're all trying to muddle through, and eventually they have these disasters happen to them, but they're all pretending that it's not happening just so they can get the pizza party. And at the end of it, the boss catches on to them and takes away the pizza party, and his head gets cut off by a sign.
Yes.
And they all claim the pizza party. They open the pizza and they all burn their mouths on the pizza. So, that was one of my favorites because it came from a real life experience, and it was those, the kind of scenes that I would come in with wouldn't be something, you couldn't really do that one again. I mean, you could, but I didn't really go for a lot of the recurring as much as like kind of these one-off, silliness or a big parody. We did one with Tara Reid, the once in a lifetime $1 million big opportunity game show, where it was really just about her needing money so badly. And the show was obviously rigged to not let her win anything, that kind of thing.
That's amazing. I think I had left by the time that sketch came out, but because if Frank Tayetti's in it, then I had already left. But I do vaguely remember that, and so good. Anyway, we have arrived at the sponsor portion of the podcast. Yes, it is from The Crow. So, speaking of character development, there's a really great comedy club in Santa Monica called The Crow, located in the Bergamot Station Arts Center, and also happens to be a super inclusive 501c3 nonprofit theater. The Crow is one of those spaces that uses comedy and storytelling for good. I highly recommend catching a show, taking some classes to develop your comedy and your tight 10. Jump up at one of their open mics, or even enroll your kids in their summer comedy camp. Or maybe just go see a hilarious show in one of their 2 theaters with a no drink minimum and free parking. Please visit crowcomedy.com for classes, shows, and tickets. We did it.
All right. Now, good sponsor. Good sponsor.
Good sponsor. I highly recommend there. I go there frequently. I think I have tickets for like 2 weeks from tonight. Did you have a favorite sketch or character that you love so much that someone else created?
I remember one of my favorites was written by Bryan Adams, and it was The Sopranos, which was, all the rage, but on PAX, which was a Catholic or Christian, I should say, station. So the bit was you're trying to watch an episode of The Sopranos, but they keep jump cutting past the violence and the swear words. So it's almost completely unwatchable. I really loved Lorraine. I thought that was so funny. And pretty much anything Deborah Wilson did, just extremely committed. Her Oprah was great. Her Whitney Houston was so funny. So, yeah, I mean, obviously I could, there was 14 seasons of great stuff, but those are the ones that jumped out when we were thinking about that.
Now, did you have a moment for when you were on Mad, when you were working on Mad, that you're just really proud of, that you accomplished?
It's funny because we talked about how I didn't think of myself as a writer in 1997. I didn't think of myself as a writer in 2001. So, yeah, when I think about what I'm most proud of, it's definitely the idea that I really learned how to be a writer at Mad. Coming in every day, going to the meetings, production, and I love all the production aspects of it. So I was really proud of myself that I felt like I was shoveling a lot of coal into that machine and, helping the machine survive and being supportive of the other actors, trying to help people with their stuff. It was very collaborative and a really fun environment. So I think just the development of myself as a writer and committing to it, because even though I had written stuff before, even with Second City, obviously there's a big commitment there. But this is a little different because you're not really writing for yourself and you're not really writing through improv, which is Second City. We used a lot of improv. So I think I'm proud of myself for, getting to the place where I felt like I could call myself a writer.
And you were nominated for WGA Awards in 2001, 2, and 3. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment right there.
Yeah, I'm grateful for that. It was really fun. I don't think we ever won one of those, but it's definitely nice to get recognized and for people to say, hey, we like what you're doing.
Now, did you ever write anything that was shot down immediately because it was too controversial or denied for other reasons?
I thought about this question before, and I like to think that I go to the line but don't go over it. And I think that's what I learned at Second City, is how to go to the line but not go over it. You go as far as you can. I do remember now, and I don't think we talked about this before, but I do remember, with MADtv, we'd go out after the shows. We always go to parties together. We went to Vegas together all the time. We hung out a lot. And all of a sudden in our MADtv, group was the porn star known as Ron Jeremy. Oh, no. And he was in our circle. And he was hanging out with us all the time. In fact, at my 30th birthday party, I had a party in Hollywood. I rented a space, had a band. And I think with a lot of people, my reputation was either cemented or soiled permanently when Ron Jeremy came to the party. People were like, oh my God, Ron Jeremy's here at your party. But I remember pitching something for him with Dick. And, if you go into Dick Blasucci's office, Dick had a picture of the Pope, unironically, in his office. Like, not an ironic picture. Like, he was very, very religious. And that was a no-go. And I think we had a couple of concepts. One that I had for Ron Jeremy was, they're shooting a porn scene. And the guy's going, yeah. And the director goes, cut. It's yeah, as if he were somehow getting the lines wrong. And that didn't go. And then the other premise was sexual harassment, but at a porn shop. Like, they're just trying to do their job, but everybody keeps taking it as sexual harassment as they're stocking the shelves and things like that. But I don't think of myself as somebody that does dirty stuff. And I did some stuff at Key and Peele that was kind of dirty, but I always made sure to protect the dignity of the performers and the audience. So I still could get away with my naughty idea, but I don't want to expose them to the point of making them uncomfortable. That's not the point. But to kind of get away with it by doing something in a way that, protects the dignity of everybody involved.
Okay. Well, going on to my next question, since MADtv had a third of the budget that Saturday Night Live had, did you have a process of cutting corners while writing a sketch to help get it made?
Yes, and I want to check your numbers there. I think it might even be less. And I remember hearing that the budget for MAD went down every year for all 14 years.
Yeah.
From the first, because that's why in the first season they would shoot on film, which is of course very pricey. And by the end of it, it was. So I worked at both shows, and SNL was just hemorrhaging money. One of my sketches at SNL was the Super Bowl Shuffle parody with Tom Brady, and it was going to be the 85 Bears on camera, and Tom Brady as Jim McMahon, one of the 85 Bears. I remember the wardrobe department was talking to me about the jerseys, and they had a video of the jerseys, and they go, oh, we bought 20 Walter Payton vintage jerseys, because those are the only ones that you could get from that season. They hired a team of seamstresses to take off all the numbers and then put all the correct numbers on. The budget for the jerseys alone for that sketch was like 10 grand.
Wow.
Just for the jerseys. So SNL, if they wanted to do something, they put everything they had into it. And at MAD, if you wrote a scene that took place on an airplane, they'd be like, okay, we like this. We're going to wait until we get 3 more airplane scenes, and then we can shoot them all in the same day so we don't have to rent the fuselage set more than once. Sometimes the producers would knock on your door at MADtv and they'd say, do you have anything that could take place in a kitchen? Because they had a kitchen set that was built and decorated, and they didn't want to tear it down if they can get another use out of it. And I had one memory of a sketch where, I can't remember the sketch, but I needed 2 people, like it was like a romantic comedy, end of the movie moment, where it was 2 people in the rain saying, I love you, damn it, and kissing each other in the rain. The sketch got picked, But then after the production meeting, I saw that it was taken off the schedule. So I went to the line producer. That's I think it was Scott Seitz, who, is the guy with the money. And I said, hey, what happened to that sketch? How come they're not doing that? He said, well, the rain machine is $10,000 to rent for the day. And that part of the sketch is like 2 sentences. So they don't want to rent that just to do those 2 sentences. So before he walked away, I said, but couldn't you just wet the actors down with sponges and put the rain in with After Effects? And he smiled. And of course, we got the sketch back. So to me, one of the big lessons I learned a lot, especially working on a more austere budget, is that you sometimes can even be more creative when you have less money to spend. You have to be scrappy. And, MADtv definitely taught me that.
We were definitely the scrappy kids. But we got shit done, and we got it done incredibly well with what we had. So MADtv was known for pushing the envelope back then. Can you name any examples of what we did that that we absolutely could not do today?
It's such an interesting question. I hear this conversation a lot around comedy, like, oh, they couldn't do that today. But the truth is they are doing it today because you can watch all those sketches on YouTube. Like, it's whether or not it was produced today, it's still being shown. You can still see it. It's not like the tapes have been burned and, you can't see them anymore. I think there's probably some things when it comes to racial sensitivity. The one that comes to mind was the Persian tow truck driver. Yeah. And there was one version of that sketch where they kind of had him made up like a donkey and they gave him hooves. And I thought that was a little too far. So, whether or not they can make it today, because somebody's willing to do anything anywhere. But should we do that? And what is the point of that? Ultimately, like when I write things, I try, years ago, I probably would have put a homeless guy in my sketch as a punchline. But when I was coming up, there was like one homeless guy. Now there's like scores of people that are unhoused. So I would never personally use that as any kind of punchline, even though I probably did, 30 years ago. So for myself, definitely, and I just will say this, I don't want to, even in my sketches, I won't mention the C word, meaning the disease, the C word, because somebody might have it and they want to enjoy themselves and forget their problems. And they turn on the sketch and we're hearing that word. I feel like that you can still get away with saying you've got 2 weeks left to live. So I want to, my hope is that everybody that watches what they're watching can have fun. Everybody, whatever your belief, background, color, condition, whatever you're in, you can just come and have fun. And, we'll try to write some evergreen comedy that will always be there to help people feel better.
Do you still see any cast members or coworkers?
Gosh, not as much. I mean, I'm on the road. I've been in Buffalo the last couple of summers, so I don't see a lot of people up here. Online, I talk to Mo Collins once in a while, Ron Peterson. I love my Mad family and, happy to talk to any of them at any time, but not a lot of, collaboration or working with them, outside of the few years that I worked on the show.
Okay. What did you do immediately after you left Mad?
Pop some champagne. No, the first time I left was in 2004, and I had just done seasons 7, 8, and 9. And I got invited by Tina Fey, whose quote you read earlier, to do, Tina invited me to do punch-up work on Mean Girls at Paramount. And Tammy Sager was on that punch-up as well. They bring a few writers to Paramount. We go through the script and, offer suggestions, thoughts, feedback, all that kind of stuff. And at the end of that, Tina said, hey, do you feel like coming back to SNL? And so here was another offer from SNL, but my contract at Mad was up. And I said, sure, it's a great free trip to New York. Always wanted to live in New York City. I grew up about 5 hours north of there. So it was a really kind of an incredible experience. I worked there for 2 years. I lasted longer than Larry David, so I hope that translates into something. And after that was over, I went back to Chicago for a little bit. And then John Crane, who was one of the writers at Mad, had become the head writer. And he knew I was available, so he asked me to come back to Mad. And I did parts of season 11 and parts of season 12, as I remember. And I worked with Key and Peele again there, and who I'd known from Second City and had worked with before. And then I did The Tonight Show with Leno for about a year, learned a ton, especially about joke writing. But, the spirit of the show really wasn't what I wanted to do. And when I worked at SNL, this is something I noticed, and it's kind of true today, too, when you watch, that a lot of SNL's stuff is somebody talking to a camera. Hi, I'm the president. Here's my presidential address. Welcome to the blank show. This is my co-host, blank. They do have slice of life scenes, of course, a little later in the show, but so much of it when I was there was people talking to the camera. So I always wrote things that were nobody talking to the camera. I wanted actors acting with each other. And like SNL, I wasn't able really to do that. At the Tonight Show, I certainly wasn't doing that. That was more about bits and jokes. And then Keegan and Jordan asked me to do their show. And that was just such a nice fit because it was like, I like to write from tropes, and create these kind of evergreen pieces. And I did that for over 40 episodes, Key and Peele, seasons 2 through 5.
Okay. Do you still see Jordan or Keegan? Do you run into them in your circle?
Like I said, I'm on the road a lot. I'm in Buffalo the last 2 summers, so I don't see them up here too much.
Okay. What are you currently working on? And are you still writing, or are you just doing stand-up, or both?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm doing a lot of stand-up, and I just got to open for Kevin Nealon and David Koechner, who's an old friend of mine, and have been building up my stuff. I've been doing stand-up on and off over the years, but more consistently since 2023. And yes, of course, I'm a writer, director, actor, producer, teacher. I do all of it. And I've got a couple of movies that I'm trying to sell. One is about the first person to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel and survive. It's called The Widow Daredevil. She was 63 when she did it. And I was here last summer in Buffalo because Niagara Falls is right next door. And I saw a lot of locations, met a lot of actors, and we did 3 table reads at the local comedy club. We did one at Niagara University, and we did one at Chautauqua Institution, the women's club there. Been very supportive of it. So I came back this summer, and I'm writing a play, and the play will perform 2 nights in September, and I'm in the middle of rehearsals for the play of The Widow Daredevil right now. And I've got 2 other film scripts. One I wrote with a partner, and another one I wrote by myself that my manager's still in LA, and we're working on getting those hopefully set up. So, some screenplays, some stand-up, and, I definitely want to be out of Buffalo when the winter comes. That's all I know.
Oh, definitely. Do you have any advice for anyone starting out in comedy writing today?
Yes, and I get this question a lot, especially on my social media. How do I make it is what people ask a lot. And I always respond, making it as an artist is making the decision to be an artist. And after that, it's just leveling up. Arthur Ashe said, start where you are, do what you can. So wherever you're at in your journey, if you're a brand new writer, then write. And now you're a writer. You can't make it. You have to decide to be it. And then it's just leveling up. And you'll get to do things on bigger levels. And even now, sometimes I'll still shoot something that is in a backyard, with friends, but it's all part of it. So I would say just do the work on whatever level you can as best you can every day, and you'll always be leveling up. And don't worry about anything and enjoy the journey, be creative, and have fun.
How can MADtv fans follow you on social media, or take a writing class from you, or join a mailing list?
Well, I'm on Truth Social only. Just kidding. Just kidding. So.
Oh, no. Zoinks.
RichTalarico.com is my social, where all my socials can be found. And I'm doing a lot of advocacy as well on my website. There's a lot of stolen, pirated material where the studio is actually profiting from. So I talk about that on my website. But you can take classes from me. I teach writing and improv, pilot writing, sketch writing, stand-up writing, movie writing, do consultations. And I do a lot of the stuff I do with James Livingston, who was on MADtv as a writer's assistant, and he was also on Key and Peele. He's also a script supervisor, script coordinator, I should say. And the two of us do a lot together. So he helps me with a lot of stuff, including a lot of the teaching. And yeah, endingcorporatepiracy.com is my advocacy site because studios are profiting off of pirated content and not paying the writers, actors, performers, and directors.
Yeah.
And this is billions of dollars that is being lost by artists. And it also is a 1-2 punch because it takes away our ability to profit in our proper compensable markets. So it's a bit of a bummer, but I've been working on that as well.
Do you have any parting words for fans of MADtv?
Well, I hear a lot from fans of Mad that they liked it better than SNL, and I just want to say you're right. And no, I think it's a really, beloved show, and I'm very grateful to everybody that's enjoyed it. And yeah, keep laughing. Let's keep having fun.
Rich, thank you so much for coming on to Mad Rewind and dropping some serious education for the fans out there. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. So we have finally made it to the in-credit portion of Mad Rewind. But let's stay in touch because I absolutely enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much. Mad Rewind is recorded at the studio venue between the largest IKEA in the United States and the 5 freeway, just south of fancy downtown Burbank. Please visit thestudiovenue.com for all your podcast needs. Mad Rewind is produced by Dan Holden and Lily Romero, edited by Kyle Tucker, and hosted and executive produced by me, Brandee Stilwell. Thank you for spending your time with us. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing. I thank you so much. I know that you have a ton of podcast options. So thank you for joining us for this little train that could. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, everybody.
It's time for Mad Rewind, yeah, with your host